Management, this was a very unique approach that we took with dealing with management strategies. How acceptable is it to limit use? How acceptable is it to educate users? Well, it depends on how bad things are. And we use conjoint analysis, and if anyone's familiar with stated choice modeling or trade-off modeling, it's very similar. Conjoint is a statistical approach where we have hypothetical scenarios. If you look at the back page of the green survey, the whole back page is 8 scenarios. Caused some confusion among respondents, but ocular analysis of results seems to look like it worked okay. Where we would have hypothetical scenarios where we vary situational factors such as use level, litter, coral damage, and facilities. Those are the 4 that we manipulated. And then we had different impact levels for each, low or high use levels, for example, good or bad condition of facilities. And whenever you have something like this, there's lots of different possible combinations you can have in a single scenario. For example, with 4 situational factors and 2 impact levels for each, you can have 16 possible scenarios. Asking people more than 10 scenarios in an on-site survey is, your brain turns to mush. Unfortunately, with conjoint, 8 is the fewest you can ever ask. And that's what we had in the survey. So that's what the software does is it creates an orthogonal design that gives you a subset of scenarios and says you need to ask these 8 scenarios or these 9 scenarios or whatever. And then after each scenario, people would rate the acceptance of the management actions. And then the subset that's in the survey, it can be used to predict all the other possible combinations. And what this is useful is the software will generate utility values that show how each of the different situational factors differentially influences acceptance of action. So let me give you an example from the survey. Scenario 2, imagine all 4 conditions were common at Kailua Bay. High number of people, some litter, substantial recreation damage to reef. And you'll see that's quantified in the survey based on some of the stuff that Rogers did here. Poor condition of facilities, etc. So if all of these conditions were common, how acceptable would it be for managers to take each of the following actions? And those 4 actions are listed. So this is a pretty bad case scenario. In fact, that's the worst case scenario where there's a lot of people, there's litter, major recreation damage to the reefs, and poor condition of facilities. Best case scenario is there's not many people, litter, no problem, the reef is in great shape, and the condition of the facilities is fine. So, and then all the different iterations will go. Other concepts that are measured, which I don't want to go into detail really on how we did it. We looked at activity group characteristics, previous visits, skill levels in their activity groups, reported encounters and perceived crowding at these sites, what will happen in the future to people based on their current experience. Are they going to be displaced? Are they going to come back at a different time or go to a different place instead if they were not happy with their experience? Facility carrying capacity, are the toilets, the picnic tables, all those kind of things being used to death? Value orientations for reefs, and this gets more into people's fundamental values. Most of the research on this is being done in wildlife, where people have a biocentric, love wildlife, versus an anthropocentric, wildlife should be used for human use, and you can place people along a continuum. We basically converted the wildlife value orientation scales to coral reefs, because my bet is that people's responses to a lot of those management actions will be based on some of their fundamental values and some socio-demographic stuff. So, like I said, we just finished data collection. Let's look at how many surveys we got and what our sample size and response was. And I got these broken down by version 1, which is the white survey, and version 2, which is the green survey, and by sub-site and major sites. So Pupukea, Waimea Bay, close to 200 for the white, close to 200 for the green, for a total sample size of Waimea Bay about 400. The rule of thumb is you want around 350 or more. 3 tables, Shark's Cove, for a total sample size of Pupukea of just close to 1,000. So in pretty good shape there for Pupukea. Waikiki Diamond Head, 584 surveys at Sanssouci, Kaimana Beach. That's where we experienced the most animosity from respondents. We did have one lady take a swing at a survey researcher and tear up the survey and spit at the survey researcher. That's where we experienced a fair amount of animosity. Diamond Head Beach Park, pretty good sample size there, especially given that a fair amount of people down there, there's a gay beach down there, and then there's also the surfers. So we made sure that the male survey workers were down at the gay beach because some of the female survey workers were a little bit scared. Anyway, but we managed to get a big response, a big sample size from that area, which was good. 924 for that site, and 923 for Kailua. So the total sample size is just under 3,000. Now, if you were to look at most human dimensions of natural resource, recreation, tourism studies, sample sizes are typically around 400. This is a massive study, very big sample size. Not the biggest I done. The biggest I done was 25,000, but that was male surveys of 100. Response rates were screaming high at Pupukea, 94% on average. Well, not many people told us to go away. San Souci, even though that was where people were kind of the grumpiest, we still did pretty well. You'll notice the lowest response rate is at Diamond Head Beach Park, mostly because a large chunk of those guys are surfers. They want to get in the water, surf, and get out of the water. They don't want to be disturbed, but we did manage to get, that's a pretty good response rate for that group. And 85% at Kailua Beach Park. A little lower there than what I was expecting. There's a lot of beach walkers there, so you kind of walk out and stand in front of them, so they have to stop, and then you ask them to fill out a survey. And they did, but some people didn't. So the total response rate was 87%, so that's pretty high. So what are the next steps? We got to enter this pile of surveys that I've got sitting in my office. This high in the software. Do the analysis. The data entry takes at least a month for that number of surveys. The analysis is very quick though once it's in the software. Crank out the reports and presentations. We're going to work on some outreach and inreach with different agencies, especially with Malamakai up in the Pupukea area, and the recreational impacts to reefs, local action strategy by DAR, and also University of Hawaii. In fact, I'm teaching at the University of Hawaii tonight. I got roped into teaching a class up there where I'm talking a bit about this study. Some journal articles and conference presentations, including the Coral Reef Symposium in Fort Lauderdale next summer, and ongoing contribution to additional studies. Like I said, there's that carrying capacity assessment tool that's being developed by DAR right now. This data will inform them. So my last slide is kind of who cares? What's the study utility here? Well, it addresses multiple priorities set out by the state and also HCRI. It's heavily quantitative. All that methodology I show you is very cutting edge for social science. And from a broader ecosystem, integrated ecosystem management approach, by definition, ecosystem management, which a lot of agencies are moving toward right now, is, by definition, understanding and managing for both ecological integrity, which we've heard a fair amount of here, and humans to ensure both ecosystem health and provide resources, products, and values for humans. So it's important to get that social science data. And managers who are reluctant to make decisions without biological data should be equally reluctant without information from various public interest groups and stakeholder groups. Because often management actions like limiting use can be very ineffective without supportive constituents, and that can actually trigger backlash, such as decisions which can be reversed in court. So I feel that the social science and human dimensions work that we're doing here complements existing biological research that you folks are doing, and also other agencies are doing. But we do need more human dimensions and natural resources research in Hawaii. There's a real dearth of that, I think, here. I'm on the state steering committee for recreational impacts to reefs, and some of the topics we're talking about, which looks like funding is on the way through, is to look at human dimensions of cruise ship and also the super ferry issue, fish feeding issues, jet skis, and also fisheries management. So hopefully those all come down the pipe in the next few years.